Today on Junkyard Ginger, we will be doing a 1022 overview and disassembly. First steps first, you'll want to go ahead and remove the magazine of your weapon. And make sure that the chamber is empty, which it is. And the only tool you'll really need is a flat tip screwdriver. There's the barrel band clamp at the end here. We'll loosen that and slide off the end and set down. Then there's the takedown screw located at the bottom of the stock, which we will loosen. And this is a captive screw. You'll notice it has some play, but it stays in, and you can remove it all the way if you want to. What we'll do is we'll put the safety in about the half position and gently rock the barrel and receiver out of the stock. We'll set the stock down. Now this rifle has had some aluminum tape applied to the bottom of the receiver to help fill the gap in the stock. Alternatively, you can put your tape inside of the stock to fill the gap, but I found that it sticks better to the actual receiver itself. And here there's two pins located here and there, which we will gently use the corner of our screwdriver to pop out. The rear one just fell loose. Sometimes that's the case with these weapons once they've been used quite a bit. Get it quite enough for my fingers. Maybe that pin wants to come out the other hole. No. Looks like we'll have to use a little bit of assistance of a Honda key. If that's too big, we'll use this little master lock key. Still a little too big. How about we use the old pin? Now once you get this pin removed, the bottom trigger assembly is free to just pull right out like that. We'll set that down. And here's the third pin in the back, which you can see is white. This is the bolt stop, or the bolt buffer. You can see when it comes all the way back, it smashes into that. Now this is actually a homemade piece from a 1/4 inch nylon bolt, and mine just broke. And here you can see that bolt buffer is actually pretty chewed up in there. You can see where the back of the bolt's been smacking it. Now I have the same bolt buffer in another 22 of mine, and it has almost no wear. And so here what you'll do is you'll grab the charging handle and pull the bolt all the way to the back and lift up slightly. You can kind of rock it out of there. The charging handle will come forward. You kind of want to get it straight and give it a wiggle, and the bolt comes out. The charging handle is then free to come out. And there's your barreled action. You could remove the scope if you wanted to. And if you want to remove the barrel, there's these two V-band clamps, or two screws on the V-band clamp, and then the barrel will simply slide out. And this receiver has been lightly polished and cleaned up inside. It was pretty rough when it was new. It still probably only has maybe 300 or 400 rounds through it, and it's not quite fully broken in yet. So here, let's take a little bit closer look at the bolt. This too has been lightly polished from new. You can see on the back side there's these machining cuts where the older 1022s, this is a factory polished surface, but it is very smooth, but you can distinctively feel the ridges in there. Looks like we got quite a bit of buildup in here. No chunks of plastic from that buffer pin. Well, here, let's see if we can line that up. Yeah, for some reason this one just chewed it up. Now, one issue with the 1022 I have had is when you put a scope on it, the scope adjustment knob tends to be right in the way of the charging handle, and the factory charging handle does not leave much room to grab onto in this situation, and I found it only comes out to about there. So what I had done is I took my tubing cutter and I simply cut a 30-30 casing down, and it fit very snugly on there. And then I filled the casing with JB Weld and let it cure overnight, and I went in and trimmed the excess off. I had polished the casing itself, and it sits in there right like that, and you can see it gives you quite a bit more real estate to grab a hold to. And it's nice being a rimmed case like that, so it helps keep your finger on there once it's on there. This has been on here for as long as I've bought this rifle, and it was on for 2 years on my other rifle before I had switched it over to this one. The extra weight makes a slight difference on the charging handle assembly. Just trying to see if there's a little grit in there. It might be some pieces of plastic. We'll have to clean this up before it goes back together. And this is really all the further you need to disassemble your weapon to field clean it. Actually, seen some bits of plastic here in the trigger group, which I've never seen that before, and I've been running these homemade bolt buffers for probably close to 8 years now in various rifle systems, and this is the first one that's ever failed on me, which is very surprising. This rifle was working just fine, but I'm very glad we took it apart to see what's inside, and that could have caused some serious issues down the road had the weapon been used more or jostled around and that piece fell out. Now in here you have your trigger group, and there's a few pins that hold it together. There's one here under the tape you can't see, and it's fairly straightforward pulling it apart. Usually this doesn't need to be taken apart further for cleaning unless you're going to be replacing some parts or modifying them. In my case, I went ahead and polished all of the inside contacting surfaces of all these inside parts. The hammer spring, inside the hammer surface, your trigger plunger, and the sear assembly in the lower portion. I did not remove any material with files or stones or anything. All we did was use a little bit of mother's mag and aluminum polish on a cotton wheel and buffed it. The trigger's a lot better than what it came, but it's still, if you wanted to really get a nice feel, there's many options out there for 1022 triggers. This is one of the polymer lowers, not really lower, but trigger group. I have not had any issues with it. This rifle's been out in the woods many times, banged around on hunts and camping trips. We have done a auto bolt release, which I feel these rifles should come with from the factory like that. It does have the stock extended magazine release. And again, the aluminum tape on both sides. One of the sides has 2 layers, I believe, and the other side has 3 layers along the bottom section. And then I put this piece right up top there just to help support it in there. My other rifle, it needed quite a bit in the back section, but this one was pretty tight there, so we left that alone. Let me go get a new bolt buffer, and we'll put this rifle back together. Alright. In my box of random 1022 parts, I have found a brand new bolt buffer. And you can see the difference in the pins here. These two are pretty much identically the same. There are very minor differences in them if you were to get out the micrometers and measure them. One sometimes will fit tighter in the other hole than the other, but that's easy to figure out. And then this bolt buffer pin. And the reassembly can be a little bit tricky on these. So what you'll want to do is take your receiver and insert the charging handle and guide rod in through the ejection port. And if you notice, there's a little embossment right here that it sits in. And here's where it can get tricky, because you want to make sure you pull back straight on this. I find that it's a little bit easier with 2 fingers. And you can take your bolt and drop it in there, let it ride forward. Then you will insert your bolt buffer pin. Then the trigger group, make sure it's in the cocked position. I like to insert the rear pin first. Sometimes giving a little bit of walk helps. Then I'll install the front pin. We'll check that the chamber is clear, which it is. Alright. Then drop your barreled receiver section into your stock. It's important to have the safety in the mid section, not all the way on or all the way off. And to do that, I find it best to make sure the weapon's unloaded and pointed in a safe direction. Dry fire it, and I know you're not supposed to dry fire your weapons, but this makes it the easiest, because then the safety will not go all the way forward and it lands about perfect. To drop right in. Then you will tighten this bottom screw. Now with that, I like to snug it up. And we'll slide the barrel band clamp back on and snug this up. Now I'll go back and tighten the main screw. This particular rifle likes it about as tight as I can get it. And then I'll go back and snug this just a little bit more. Alright. Reinsert your magazine, and this is ready to go. You can see how far forward that charging handle sits, which makes it very nice when you're shooting to just be able to grab it and not have to worry about getting close to this scope turret here. You don't even have to get, all the way up to the bolt handle. And there we go.